Hey there, everybody. This is Kenny. Welcome back to another edition of the Leading from the Middle podcast. This is the podcast for middle managers who want to develop themselves, develop their teams, and improve their results. I got to speak to the CEO of Girard Training Solutions, Eric Girard. He's also an author, he is also a podcast host, and Eric really is going to talk about a topic that should be near and dear to your hearts as you look to bring up other leaders. So, how do you transition to the role of leader, particularly from the role of individual contributor? How do you then build a team? And how do you really connect with your team and kind of break away from being an individual contributor to actually doing the job of a leader? You don't want to miss a second of this important conversation. Let's get at it.
This episode is brought to you by Kitcaster. Kitcaster books you on top podcasts. How do funded startup founders attract prospects and talent? Podcast interviews. How do entrepreneurs with exits find new deals? Podcast interviews. How do C-suite execs differentiate in crowded markets? Podcast interviews. Kitcaster books you on top podcasts. Click the link in the show notes for a special offer. Celebrate good conversation.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of the Leading from the Middle podcast. I have a tremendous leader with me today who is doing some phenomenal things and really helping to train and lift up leaders, emerging leaders, senior leaders. He's doing it all. And I can't wait to hear his backstory. And we are going to have a conversation about new leaders and the role of a leader and how you can transition. So without any further ado, I want to introduce the CEO of Girard Training Solutions. Eric Girard has joined me today. Eric is also an author. The name of the book is Lead Like a Pro. I'm going to ask him to talk about that later on and find out where we can get that and pick it up. He's also a podcast host. Eric, it's Hope also, but host Eric, it is so great to have you. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me, Kenny.
Awesome. I want to really find out about your backstory first, because there has to be something in your story as you were coming up that has moved you to be so passionate about helping leaders. So tell us about your backstory and what's led you to doing what you're doing right now.
Yeah. So how far back do you want to go? I mean, we can go all the way back into.
Go back as far as you want, sir.
All right. So I've been in learning and development my entire career. So I actually started teaching people how to do things in the Boy Scouts when I was a teenager. I was teaching kids how to swim, paddle a canoe, row a boat, and I loved it when I saw the light bulbs go off. So when I got into college, I wound up discovering the American Society for Training and Development and got my first job back in the early 90s teaching people how to use their Macintoshes and Windows. Didn't like that, went back, got a master's degree in intercultural training, wound up living in Australia for a couple of years, teaching English in Japan. And after a couple of different experiments, wound up in Silicon Valley, right at the top of the dot-com bubble, and was teaching new hire orientation and then employee development and then finally management development. And I loved helping new managers make that transition from being a great individual contributor to being a great people manager. And I experienced what it was like when somebody who was untrained became a manager, became my manager. So this happened a lot in Silicon Valley. There was a lot of change all the time, lots of reorgs. And somebody who had been my peer would be promoted, no training, no support. They were just suddenly the manager of the team, and they would make a mess of it. And it was really uncomfortable and no fun. Yeah. And I thought, I don't like that. And then in a stroke of irony, it was my turn. I got promoted and I made a huge mess of it. I micromanaged. I didn't set goals. I didn't give good feedback. I didn't coach. And that was very uncomfortable. And I walked away from that thinking, okay, never again. This is never going to happen to anybody else again. So after continuing my career in Silicon Valley, I decided in 2020 during the pandemic, my wife and I are like, let's get out of Silicon Valley. This place is stupid. So, so we got out of Silicon Valley, came up to the Seattle area. I hung up my shingle and thought, I'm going to make it my life's purpose to help new managers make that transition and successfully go from where they were in their zone of genius, being a great individual contributor, a great employee, to developing a new zone of genius, being a great manager and managing people and getting results through people. So that's the long answer to your question, but that kind of maps out how I got here and why I'm so passionate about helping managers be great.
What an amazing journey. I love it. And and the own personal experience. And I loved how you were so vulnerable there, man. You said, I just made a mess of things. Um, but that's what happens, I think, when we promote leaders and move leaders into positions that and then don't give them any training. Now I started to say that they're not ready for, but that's our fault that we don't get them the training. And that's really where you come in. We see this a lot, Eric, in a lot of industries, but especially in retail and restaurants or in call centers, where we'll tend to promote the best salesperson or the person that maybe works the hardest, and then what? And there's so much struggle that we see from, them going from individual contributor to working alongside their friends, and now they're their bosses. So, talk us through now this whole big transition, and it's a perfect time of year too, because a lot of people will probably be moving up in January and stuff like that. What are some of the first places that you start with leaders who have just gotten that opportunity to move into management?
Well, it's funny you mentioned call centers because I actually worked for Apple Care.
Oh,
So
wow. Wow.
yeah,
Yeah.
so inside Apple, you've got that group of people who answer the phones
Oh,
and
yeah.
answer the texts and things like that. That's a huge group of people. That's
Yeah.
tens of thousands of people who take care of that, and thousands of managers. And I was responsible for developing the managers. So I saw that happen all the time where somebody would be a great advisor, a great doer, a great problem solver. And then suddenly they're over a team of 5, 10, 15 advisors themselves. And they're like, what do I do? Now luckily at Apple, there was training available. It wasn't so bad, but it was delayed a little bit.
Hmm.
And so you would get promoted and then you would get training. And that's a very common thing to happen. So,
Yeah.
I would do my best to kind of remediate and say, okay, you've probably figured out things by hook or by crook. Now let's get in and teach you the right habits so that you're able to coach, provide feedback, and make that mental transition from I was paid for getting stuff done, for getting tasks done. Now I'm paid for getting results through others
Yes.
and enabling other people to do great work. So that's your role as a manager, is kind of being the conductor of an orchestra.
Yeah. And your experience, how long does that take to settle in? So because I've seen a lot of leaders get promoted in and they're still trying to do the work that they did before or for someone else. What's an average of how that settles in? Um, how quickly does that settle in for the person to know that, hey, I got to get the job done through others?
Well, it depends on how much support they get.
Yeah.
So if they get little or no support, they might go through their entire career as a manager stressed out of their mind because they're still trying to do their old job the way that they used to do it, plus something about managing this group of people. So that can be very stressful and it can go on for months. And so that can be really
Wow.
stressful. And a lot of new managers burn out and leave their jobs because it's just like, I can't do both.
Yeah.
So if somebody gets training, if they get into a course that says, look, what got you here won't get you there. And you need to really change your mindset. If you get that early, then somebody can settle in within weeks. So it's a huge difference.
Yeah.
When somebody learns how to delegate, for example, and how to groom somebody so that they can delegate to them, how to provide great feedback, how to provide great coaching. These are all things that if you learn these skills, and it doesn't take long to learn the skills. I mean, my courses take a total of 10 hours spread out over 4 days. So it's not a massive investment. if you practice those skills, you can nail it in several weeks, and then it's, I won't say smooth sailing, but it's smoother sailing.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. I want to go down the road of the relating to people and some of those intangibles that they may run across, right? Oh, you weren't the perfect advisor, and now you're telling me what to do or whatever. What are some of the first couple of really key things that you talk about, Eric, when it comes to just relating to this team that they've now inherited?
The first chapter in my book, and the longest chapter, is all about empathy.
Mm,
So, here it is. We're recording this in 2023. And given everything that's going on in the world, on the world stage, on the national stage, and then in people's individual lives, I mean, employees bring a lot to work that they're just trying to cope with.
yes.
And then you've got the stresses of work. And so I think that as a boss, as a manager, you need to build your empathy muscles. And you can do that even if you're not a naturally empathetic person, but you need to build up gradually those muscles that help you be a great listener, that help you walk a mile in other people's shoes, not to become a therapist. I'm really clear on that. I'm not trying to turn you into a counselor or a therapist, but hey, just be a great listener, really get where people are at so that you can listen deeply and then say, okay, great. I hear you. You matter. You're important. And let's come up with a plan to improve your performance, to get you on the right track. And if the employee is really struggling, can you refer them to the employee assistance program or HR or something like that? So you're referring them to a professional.
Hmm.
But it's that really squishy skill of empathy is, I think, a prerequisite today. And you don't have to become Mother Teresa. I'm not suggesting that you become, a saint, but just spend some time listening without planning what you're going to say in response.
Yeah.
Really listen deeply for what's going on, and not just the words the other person is saying, but what they mean by that. And try to figure out, okay, what would it be like if I was actually in this person's shoes? Like, what would that feel like?
Hmm.
Having that perspective, having that other focused perspective, is going to make it really easy when it comes time to delegating, goal setting, coaching, feedback, because the other person feels like they can trust you. And that's massive. That's so important. To be
Absolutely.
trusted by your employees is so important.
Yeah. And and that takes time, I think, right? The trust factor. But I love what you said with empathy. I think that is a perfect way to start, right? You're just having a conversation, you're just listening, and like you said, you don't have to even make any judgments. Just, hey, man, I hear you. I hear where you're coming from. One of the things that I also have seen in the past new leaders struggle with is a piece of accountability. I mean, it may sound silly, but all of a sudden you got folks that may show up late, or and they just struggle with, now what do I do? And I've seen, one extreme or the other extreme. I don't do anything, or I'm a little too harsh because I've got to mark my territory. So hey, yeah, you're 5 minutes late, go home. Um, what's some of your advice there, Eric, in terms of, setting your expectations and accountability?
Well, Brene Brown, who's one of my heroes,
Yes.
Brene Brown says, clear is kind, unclear is unkind.
Yeah.
And I think you can be both clear and completely respectful at the same time.
Mm,
And so I think, a big part of this is not assuming. So making sure that people understand your expectations. Hey, I need you in the office at 8:30. And the reason why I need you in the office at 8:30 is not because I'm a control freak, but it's because if you're not ready to go by 8:30, then this causes downstream effects. So there's a real reason for it. Okay. And then also treating people like adults. I mean, a lot of people have kids, a lot of people have situations that are going on personally that might prevent them from walking in at 8:30 on the dot. So then have a private conversation with that person to work it out. Let me give you an example of what I don't mean. One of my managers in Silicon Valley and I did not get along. We butted heads a lot, and we were in a meeting with other people, and we disagreed over something. So she pulled me out of the meeting, took me out of the conference room we were in, and took me into a crowded break room. So people were coming and going, getting coffee. She takes me to a corner of this break room and says, "This is where coaching comes in. Maybe this isn't the job for you."
Oh,
And I'm
wow.
like, okay,
Yeah.
wait a minute. First off, we're in public. This isn't coaching. And you just threatened my job.
Yeah.
Like, how much do I trust you right now? So don't do that.
Yeah.
But, can you take somebody privately, calmly into a closed break room or into a private Zoom session and say, "Hey, listen, I don't think we've ever talked about this before, but this is how I'd like this to work out in the future." So, for example, if this is the first time that somebody walked in 5, 10 minutes late and that it causes a real problem, then quietly, calmly have a private conversation. And using the SBI model of feedback can be really helpful: situation, behavior, impact.
Hmm.
This is what was going on. This is what you did, and this is all from the perspective of like pretend I had recorded it. So that objective sort of, hey, we're both watching this on a screen. And then the impact is a little more subjective. This is the impact that your behavior had on me, on the team, on the functioning of the group.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so those are just some things that you can do to be clear and respectful and kind, and treating people like adults, which I think is really important because you just don't know. And if you don't build that trust, then you'll never know because they'll never open up to you.
Yeah. Eric, that's great advice. What are some other really important things when it comes to developing themselves, but also developing and building a team that are really critical for new leaders?
One of the things I love to encourage new leaders to do is soon after you take over the team, run a SWOT analysis. So SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats.
Hmm.
And you're looking internal to the team to see what the team's strengths are and what its weaknesses are. And then external to the team, maybe forces inside the larger organization that are acting on the team. What are those opportunities and what are those threats?
Hmm.
And do a thorough SWOT analysis to say, hey, this is where the team is at. And then also, I love talking about Bruce Tuckman's forming, storming, norming, performing model,
Hmm.
where you spend some time thinking about, okay, I can expect to see the team go through 4 distinct stages where they're getting together, they're excited, they're a little unsure, they don't know what they don't know, but they're ready to go. Then they go into storming, and their competence drops. They're unhappy with each other. The personalities are starting to come out. People are button heads, and now they're starting to realize, oh yeah, we don't know a whole lot. And then norming, where you start to come up the other side of the curve, where it's like, okay, we've got it figured out. We've got the pecking order figured out. We know who's responsible for what. So things are starting to get better. And then performing, where okay, we're hitting on all cylinders. Things are good. So that simple model, you can watch the team as a leader and say, you know what, I see what's happening. Share that with the team. Say, hey, you know what, I think we've moved into storming now. That's okay. It's fine to storm. Let's just not get stuck here. But
Hmm.
let's work it out. Let's work out those conflicts. Let's have those open, honest, trusting conversations so that we can move on to norming and performing.
Hmm. That is really great advice. And is the SWOT analysis after the first 30 days or 60 days, or it just depends?
I wouldn't wait too long.
Okay.
I would spend some time getting to know the team. So I would be listening and asking a lot of questions to begin with. For the first few weeks, I wouldn't make any sudden changes. I would really try to understand how things are now. Unless the team is really, really dysfunctional, I wouldn't
Yeah.
come in and start moving things around.
Okay. Gotcha.
So understand the team first, and then after a few weeks, then do a SWOT analysis. And you can do the SWOT analysis with the team during a team meeting, and just say, hey, let's be candid about this. What are our strengths? What are our weaknesses? What are our opportunities? What are our threats? And then the team can brainstorm and come up with the antidote to all those things.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah. So I wouldn't wait too long,
Okay.
but I would caution a new leader against making sweeping changes right away. I think that's a bad idea.
Yeah. Um, I agree. This may sound a little bit off, but uh, Eric, how do you advise these new leaders on how to handle? Because you train everything. I read a lot about you. You train everything the right way, 100%, and it's great advice. And you're right here in 2023. You're giving great advice for the future as well. Um, but that pressure that's still there from above, right? To get results. How do you? What advice do you give to leaders to kind of fend off that and still stick to? I got to do my SWOT analysis. I've got to, storm and norm. I got to do all of that and really get this team. How can I convince my upper leaders that I need some time, right, to do all these things? I'm doing them the right way when they just want results right away. How do you how do you train that balance for new leaders?
Yeah. Well, so in my change management classes, I talk about I put up a graph and say during normal times, your job is to do what? Produce results, right?
Hmm.
Well, guess what? During times of change, like when you take over a new team, your job is to produce results. So yeah, you're absolutely accountable to senior management to get stuff done. You need to produce results. You've got a line on the P&L somewhere that you're contributing to. So you need to be thinking about that. And there is a return on investment. There's an ROI to you performing these activities. And so what you need to do is be thoughtful about explaining to your boss, I understand that you need me to produce, and I intend to produce absolutely. And I need a little time, maybe it's an hour a week spread out over a few months, but I need staff meeting time. I need development time with my team to build trust with this team, um, for them to get to know each other, to go through the change curve, and that takes a little bit of time as well. So you will see a return on that investment because if I don't go through it, you will see productivity drop. If you do allow us to do it, productivity will go up, maybe exponentially.
Hmm.
So consider it an investment. That hour a week I take, or that offsite I take, where I take everybody offsite for a day, that's an investment that's going to pay off. And so that's how I would phrase that to upper management.
Yeah, that is awesome. There's a lot of maturing that has to happen, I think, pretty fast, when someone is promoted, and I love the way you lay it out for them because these are really, really practical things. Um, this has been amazing. I have just a couple other quick things for you. Um, in your opinion, Eric, what are a couple of the really top skills that new leaders will need going into 2024 and beyond?
One of the things that I hear a lot of in my classes is folks don't know how to delegate. And that's a real Achilles heel because
Yeah.
if you can't delegate, then you become the bottleneck for everything, because the attitude is often, hey, I was the best call center advisor, or I was the best retail cashier, or whatever it is, right? I was the best. That's why I got promoted. So it'll just be faster if I just freaking do it myself. And a lot of new managers get caught in that where they're like, you know what, I could teach you how, but it will take hours and I can do it in a minute, so I'll just do it. And so then it all winds up on your back. There's a great article that I always recommend. It's an HBR article. It was published in 1974. So keep that in mind when I tell you
What?
the title.
Okay.
So it was published in 1974. It was republished in 1999. So they actually republished and brought it back. But it's called Who's Got the Monkey? And what we mean by monkey, and if you don't like monkey, substitute squawking parrot.
Yeah.
But substitute this animal that rides on on your employee's shoulders, a problem they've got. So they walk around with this problem and they come to you expecting you to fix it. And if you just say, yeah, yeah, I got it, I'll take it, then you take that squawking parrot off their shoulder and put it on your shoulder. And if you keep doing that, by the end of the day, you're weighed down by squawking parrots
Wow.
and you can't get your own work done.
Yeah.
So what my mantra is, accept no parrots, accept no squawking, noisy animals. have a conversation with that person to figure out how they can take care of it themselves. So it is a fantastic article. It's very, very practical. HBR thought highly enough of it to republish it.
Yeah.
And it's just a really simple delegation model where basically you're not taking on everything these people come to you with. You're saying, I hear what you're saying. I understand you've got a problem. Why don't we come up with a plan for how you can handle this?
Yeah.
So I would say delegation is like the power skill of
The
2024.
power skill. Absolutely. And who would think an article from 50 years ago would give us advice going into 2024? But it's
Yeah,
dead
it is.
on.
That is 50 years ago, isn't it?
Years ago, yeah. Oh my gosh, that is, I love it. Now I have to look that up. Harvard Business Review. I gotta look that up now. Wow. Um,
Yeah,
this,
it's free. Sometimes you have to subscribe to HPR to get
yeah.
stuff. This one's free.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Excellent. Um, tell us. Well, I want to ask you this before I want you to tell us about your book and how we can get it and folks can connect with you. Did I read that you're a scuba diving instructor and
Yes, you
that
did.
you're moving? Why?
When I was in Australia, it was really kind of funny because I was bored one day walking around just along a strip mall, and I wandered into a dive shop, and the guy I talked to must have been a heck of a salesman because that was in 1998, and I'm still scuba diving.
Wow. Wow.
So I was diving with my oldest friend in Maui on the Molokini crater.
Oh,
And for our 50th birthdays, we're celebrating our 50th birthdays, and we're like, man, this is so awesome. This is so great. And I'm like, I got to do something about this. Like, I got to make this like a thing. So I decided that by 2030, I was going to teach scuba someplace tropical. So I was going to semi-retire or retire and teach scuba in Hawaii or Costa Rica or Mexico or something. So that's why I became a scuba instructor. Did that in 2020 during the pandemic.
awesome.
And so I teach right now. I teach in the Pacific Northwest. I live outside of Seattle, and I,
Uh-huh.
I teach scuba in the Puget Sound, which is not the
Wow.
tropics. It's the water is in the 40s a lot of the year.
Wow.
So you wear a lot of undergarments and a dry suit. I don't get wet when I scuba dive. I
Uh-huh.
stay dry when I swim.
Okay.
But if you can dive and teach here, you can do it anywhere because it's
Wow.
dark, it's cold, there are currents. And so, when we finally get up and move to Costa Rica or Hawaii or wherever we go, it's just going to be gravy. It's just going to be
Wow.
amazing. Yeah.
I love that, man. That is so awesome. So awesome. Wow. Wow. Um, tell us about the book and how folks can get it and how can folks connect and work with you?
Yeah. So the book is Lead Like a Pro, the essential guide for new managers. You can find it on Amazon. It's a paperback, a Kindle ebook, and an audio book that I recorded myself. And I encourage y'all to pick it up and would be really flattered if you would do that. And then if you want to work with me, if you want to learn more about me and what I do, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm Eric P. Girard at LinkedIn. And you can go to my website, girardtrainingsolutions.com. And that explains all the programs that I've got to offer.
Yeah. Yeah, that is awesome. I'm gonna order your book. I haven't yet. I will today. But I have to tell you, your website has got some great stuff on it. You really put out some stuff even before folks work with you, and some great advice on it. So I would really, really encourage folks to go out and check out your website as well. And it's really laid out well, and you give some great advice on there free, which is fantastic. So hopefully people will go out there and then decide to work with you further. Eric, this is amazing. And we only hit one topic. Eric is really an expert in a lot of leadership topics. I asked him before we started, I wanted to just go down this road and man, oh man, you gave some tremendous advice. So I just want to thank you so much, first of all, for what you're doing and encourage you to keep doing it. It has to be making a difference out there for leaders that are connecting with you and taking your courses. And thank you for being so generous with your time today and giving us so much. So appreciate having you on.
Oh, it was my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Oh, yeah, the pleasure was absolutely mine. So folks, we're going to leave it there. This has been Kenny and Eric. This has been the Leading from the Middle podcast. We'll talk to you real soon.